الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. اللهم علمنا ينفعنا وانفعنا بما زدنا علما إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين. So alhamdulillah, we are now at the chapter entitled This is the Remedy, page 39 of the book Inward Sin, Batil al-Itham by Imam Al-Buti, rahimahullah. And this is our sixth session discussing this book. And the Imam starts off in this section. He says, before I tell you about the remedy, I need to ask you something. And he says, are you truly aware of the malady and its diagnosis? Now, just to recap, what we're talking about in this book is we're answering this question. Imam al-Buti is answering this question that people ask is they say, why is it that we have so much Islamic activity, so to speak, or activism, and we have conferences and courses and rihlas and this and that. We have all these things going on. Muslims seem very, very active, but we're not where we were in the past. We don't have the Ottoman Empire, we don't have the Abbasid Empire, we don't have a Khilafah, right? We don't have any of these things. So what's going on? Like we're very, very like active and keen, and we're doing all these things, but nothing's happening. And he says, well, we have to look deeper. Like there's something else going on, which is like what are the intentions and the motives behind all this activity? Is it really sincerely for Allah? Are we actually putting the emphasis on Allah and drawing nearer to Allah and worshiping Allah and manifesting our slavehood to Allah? Or do we have other agendas at play? Are we seeking fame? Are we seeking money? Are we seeking fortune? Are we trying to please the ego? What are we doing? What's really going on here? So he's arguing that if we're not seeing tawfiq, if we're not seeing success from Allah in all these activities we're doing, it's like, well, maybe we've got the wrong intention. Maybe we're neglecting on top of the intention, maybe we're neglecting the basic fundamentals of worship to Allah. So he's giving examples we discussed in previous weeks. How people uh, they get so caught up in activism, right? "Quote unquote" activism, and that can involve protests or marches or spreading awareness, as they call it, all these kinds of things. Dawah stuff, Dawah tables, all these kinds of things. But then these people neglect praying salah in the masjid and jama'ah. They neglect reading Quran. They neglect adhkar. They neglect fasting. They neglect tahajjud. They neglect salat duha. They neglect um, making dua to Allah. They sort of neglect building and maintaining and developing a meaningful relationship with their Lord. Then, like, maybe that's why these things aren't happening that we want to happen. And so and part of this is the inward sins. So people are out there doing these outward actions, but they're not rectifying themselves on the inward, right? And so these inward sins are sins that you might not see, and these can be sins of the ego, sins of pride, and arrogance, and jealousy, and so on and so forth. They're happening on the inside. And if those are present, and Muslims have them between them, and it can be an individual level. It can also be at the group level where people think, well, success lies with my jama'ah and not your jama'ah, or my tariqah, not your tariqah, and so on and so forth. And it becomes like this competition, this egotistical competition. Then there's no tawfiq from Allah, right? So people need to realize, and they need to work together. And so I think I mentioned this last time as well, that we have to realize that uh, whatever jama'ah or tariqah or madhab you follow or you belong to, the group or association you belong to is only a means towards an end. It's not the end in and of itself. It's a means towards an end. And that's evident in the names of these things called them, like tariqah, madhab. What does it mean? It's leading to something. It's a road or a path leading to something. Leading to what? Leading to Allah. It's all leading to Allah. So this is what we've been covering so far. So what he says here is he says, now, before we jump into the remedy, before we start talking about the remedy, you have to be convinced that this is the problem, right? So Imam Al-Buti, what he's doing here, this is a classic uh, pedagogical method here, right? Is that when you're and Imam Al-Buti, I've seen this in several of his books. This is his method. Like he takes you through something. And one of my teachers in Morocco points out to me as well. He said Imam Al-Bulti's method is that he like when he wants to convince you of an argument, right? He does it with you step by step, right? So he explains something to you, and then he says to you, okay, do you understand? Did you have anything to disagree with me about? Is this clear? Okay, let's move on to the next step, and let's move on to the next step, and let's move on to the next step. Right? He slowly builds you up, right? And he'll stop you, and he'll say, listen. Like for example, like in Club de Colonia, I think I remember in that book, his book on theology, The Great Universal Sureties. I think this is what I remember. Like when he gets into prophethood, when he starts talking about Risale, because obviously in the book of theology, you talk about Allah and his attributes first, and then you talk about Nabuwat, you talk about prophecy. So he said, so I think what I remember is when he gets to the section on prophecy, on what you believe about prophets, he stops and says, okay, do you believe in Allah? Let's go over this. Let's recap. Do you believe in Allah? If you don't believe in Allah, and you're not aware of who Allah is and his attributes, then there's no benefit in me talking to you about messengers and prophets. Right? It's like you don't like what's the point of talking to an atheist about who the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is? Right? He's the messenger of Allah. He has to believe in Allah first. And then he'll believe. Then he'll be prepared to believe that Allah sent the messenger. If he doesn't believe Allah exists, how is he going to believe in a messenger? So you have to build people up, and this is again one of the things I've noticed because I've been teaching people in the U.S. recently as well. And people have these interesting questions about that's a different attitude I guess people have over there. They're like, well, how can I help so and so? How can I help so and so? How can I help so and so? And again, you can't help a person if that person doesn't see that there's a problem, right? This is the key thing. It's like there's an organization in North America called Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Helps alcoholics, and then they say the first step is admitting it, right? You can't get cured, you can't solve your problem if you don't admit that there's a problem to begin with. It's just common sense. So this is the method that Imam al-Buti is saying. He's implementing here. He's saying that if you don't believe what I've said to you, right? If you don't believe that this is the problem, that we are neglecting the inward and we're focusing so much on the outward, then you're not going to benefit from the remedy. If I present the remedy, you're not going to benefit from it, right? And there's no incentive. You see, so it's like again, if you're trying to convince someone to lose weight, he has to believe that he's overweight to begin with. If he doesn't believe he's overweight, you can tell him, oh yeah, try this diet, try intermittent fasting, try working out every day, try going for a jog, try lifting weight. It's useless because he doesn't believe there's a problem. So this is what he lays out to begin with. But then he says, but if my words have settled in your soul, right? It's established in there, and you are certain that this is the secret behind everything that we complain about, you will pay close attention to what I'm saying. If you think, yes, you're right, Imam al-Buti, you're right. This is the problem. Okay, now you're going to listen to me. So, and you will use this remedy, and you will call people to it, and you will remind them of it. It will be easy for you to have certainty. And then he says, but I prescribe this to myself first, right? It has to start because again, he doesn't want to be in a situation where he's arrogant, where he's being arrogant and dictating everyone else. He says, no, this remedy I apply to myself first, and then to everyone else. And then he gives this analogy, and he says, imagine this. He says, you have a student, he's in an exam room, right? And he's totally absorbed in answering the questions, as you are usually when you're doing an exam. You're totally absorbed in trying to answer the questions. And then he asks the invigilator, uh, those in America, they call that a proctor, but the British English is invigilator, for a glass of water. And when it's brought to him, he drinks the water and his eyes become fixated on the glass. And he starts thinking about it. So he takes a glass of water, he drinks it, he puts it down, and then he's just like, he gets distracted, right? He's looking, oh, it's so clean, it's so delicate. I wonder who made it or wherever it comes from. And then he forgets about the questions. He forgets about the exam. So what's the remedy? The remedy is it's very, very simple. He needs to be reminded that he's in an exam. Don't get distracted. Like the invigilator just has to come along and say, oh, you only have an hour left. You got about 50 questions there. You better get going, right? Don't neglect this. So he says it's the same thing here, but we are in a much bigger exam. We have a much bigger consequence to worry about. So what happens is we have to remind this person of his soul and his essence, and we have to draw his attention in critical hours, in these critical hours of what he is living through. And he says, our true identity in this life, the function we were created for, is we can never forget it. It is what? What is our true identity? We are Allah's slaves. He owns us. Everything we do, all of our vicissitudes, all the vagaries of life are in his hand, and to him alone is our return. And he quotes the ayah in Surah Al-An'am, ayah 162, قُلْ إِنَّ الصَّلَاةِ وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. My Lord and say, my prayer, my rights, my living and my dying are for Allah alone, Lord of all creation. Everyone is branded with this identity. So you have to, again, be reminded that you're Allah's slave and that everything goes back to Him, and you have to implement that slavehood. So he says this can only be achieved by rising above many of the characteristics and desires of the soul and subjugating them to what Allah has commanded. Right? So, for example, uh, there's nothing. This is one of the things to understand. There are wisdoms, and I think we covered this before, but just remind there are wisdoms as to why Allah has put certain things in us. Right? There's a wisdom as to why do we love food? Why do we love drink? Why do we love conjugal relations? Why? We love to be with the other gender, right? These are all things. Why? Because this maintains life and this maintains the species, right? Allah's put a natural desire in us, right? Men love women, women love men. Shukran wa yes, we're on page 42 now. So women are attracted to men, men are attracted to women, and we like food and we like drink. Why? Because this is what keeps us going, right? This is how we maintain life, we maintain the species. And what that means is that if we didn't actually have an emotional attachment to food and drink and to the opposite sex, and it was purely rational, we probably wouldn't do it. Or we just wouldn't do it. Right? If you thought, okay, I need to eat because, yeah, I need to stay alive, right? These are rational. Need to get married, got to continue the species. No, Allah's put love in your heart for that, those things. But you subjugate them. You recognize that Allah set a limit on this, right? You don't fornicate, you don't overeat, you don't overdrink, you don't eat haram foods. You keep everything within the scope of what Allah has revealed. That's how you manifest your slavehood. So there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. So when you understand, there's nothing wrong with those desires inherently. Those desires have a function. Those desires have a purpose that they're maintaining. Like as I said, they're keeping you alive as an individual, and they're maintaining the human race as a collective. And then on top of that, he says, the side note, he says people might ask, okay, why isn't there like a just as there's a natural desire for food and drink and conjugal relations? How come there isn't like a natural desire to pray or a natural desire to fast or a natural desire to do other acts of worship? He says, well, that's different. Why? Because that's something that Allah wants you to put effort into. That's something Allah wants you to work towards, because that's how you show your love for Allah. You have to work on that. You want to work on your love for Allah. There's something there to begin with, but you want to keep working on it, working and developing it. And this is again how you manifest your slavehood to Allah. So he says, so we subjugate all of that to what Allah has commanded. All these desires, like I just mentioned, we submit to Him alone in destitution and submissiveness. The heart should not be attached to anyone but Him. We ask for goodness from no one but Him, and we seek refuge from evil from no one but Him. This is the difference between the believer and the unbeliever, right? We are in a state of submission. This is what else Islam means. We are in a state of submission to Allah, whereas the unbeliever, he doesn't see this. He sees, well, he sees himself as he's in control of his destiny. He's in control of his fate. He's in control of his circumstances, and he believes that it's within his power to manipulate the circumstances, to manipulate whatever is around him, and to create his own happiness. And if he doesn't get that happiness, that's how he gets depressed and anxious. There's a good book on that available from Nawabooks. Try it out. But that's essentially the problem, though, right? Like I don't mean to be facetious, but that's essentially the problem. Is where, again, as Muslims, we can get influenced by those ideas, you see, and we can start thinking that, okay, oh, that they do, why can't we do it? Right? Yeah, I'm in control and I can make these happen, and I'll do this and I'll produce my happiness. And he said, no, 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 no. That's not how it works. You're Allah's slave, and on top of that, and you go back to the book, Depression and Anxiety, the greatest blessing in this life is not to be a millionaire or to have a fancy car or to have a fancy house or to have loads of kids. That's not the greatest blessing in this life. The greatest blessing in this life is nearness to Allah. That's the greatest blessing in this life. and Allah will bring you near to Him in different ways. Could be something good, could be a tribulation, it could be a blessing. So he goes on to say, he says, talk about means that bring us to this end and obstacles that hinder us. So we're trying to get to that point, right, where we're getting back to Allah. This is what we're created for. We're trying to manifest the slavehood to Allah. And he says, we have the means that take us to this end and we use them. And that is how we show gratitude to Allah for them. As for the obstacles that hinder us, we avoid them, we go around them. And that is the patience that Allah has commanded us to have. Right? So we see means that draw us near to Allah and helps manifest our slavehood. And we take them when we use them, we manifest gratitude. Because that's the fundamental core. The fundamental core of manifesting gratitude to Allah is to use the blessings that He has given you to please Him. Right? So Allah's giving you the gift of sight. He's giving you the gift of hearing. He's giving you the gift of breathing. He's giving you the gift of so many gifts and abilities He's given you. The ability to read. So you use those abilities. Like, well, I have all these gifts. Okay, so I have eyes, I have ears. Okay, I'm going to memorize the Quran. I'm going to teach the Quran. I'm going to learn fiqh. I'm going to memorize fiqh. I'm going to teach children. I'm going to spread the deen. I'm going to give dawah. Right? I have hands. I'm strong. I'm a carpenter. I'm builder. Okay, I'm going to help people. I'm going to help people get build houses. I'm going to build a masjid. I'm going to help people with whatever physical needs they have. I'll do removals, whatever. You start using the gifts that Allah has given you to please Allah, not use the gifts Allah has given you to displease Him. And at the same time, there are obstacles that you go around. There are obstacles, again, these are things like the sins and bad deeds, but you avoid them. You avoid them, and your patient says, no, I'm not going to fall into that because that's going to take me away from Allah. It may be tempting, it may look enjoyable, but I'm going to stay away from it because that's the opposite. That will be the opposite of manifesting slavehood to Allah. And he says, Imam Al-Buti after that, he says, only two kinds of people are ignorant of this fact. The person who denies Allah, and thus he does not believe in slavehood, either as a function or as an end, and we have nothing to say to him in this regard. Okay, that same thing. There's no point. Someone doesn't believe in Allah. It's like, well, what's the point? How do we explain this person doesn't believe in Allah? How to explain to this person he's a slave of Allah? He doesn't believe Allah exists. So this person has to go back. This person has to be given a different discussion. We have to talk to him about Allah's existence first. Um, and the second person is the one who is absent-minded because of all the temptations and distractions. This person, his situation can be remedied by being reminded, right? So someone who's merely distracted because of everything around him, the temptations and whatnot, this person can be brought back by being reminded. So he goes on to say, Allah knows the effects of these worldly temptations and distractions and how they make the Muslim forget. And therefore, we have the Fatiha every day in the prayer. We say, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. That's a reminder 5 times a day at least, right? Or 10 times because it's into, well, more than that because it's in every surah and every rak'ah we recite the Fatiha. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. We come back and we remember that it's you alone we worship, you alone we ask for help. And we repeat this over and over again. So if one is a sincere Muslim, he will resist these worldly temptations and distractions and constantly remember that he is a humble slave who belongs to a sublime, overpowering owner. But that reminder keeps coming in because it's connected as well. Ibadah, ubudiyah, worship, slavehood. You're Allah's slave. That has to keep being needs to be hammered into you over and over again so that you remember this. I'd rather like this is what Allah is doing. You have to sit back. You have to sit back. It's like um, I remember I read a book. I was looking at this book. It's like it's a children's book. It's an interesting story. It's called The Wise Horse, and it's a boy walking through a forest with a horse, and the boy says, "I can't see my way out of this forest," and the horse says, "Can you see your next step?" And he says, "Yes." Well, take that then. Take that. Right? Sometimes well, that's the sort of like people get depressed and anxious because people think, well, I can't see the bigger picture. I can't see where my life is going. I don't know where I'm going to be in 5 years or 10 years or whatever next year. I don't know. Right? But you understand that when you say you're a lost slave, that's not you don't have to know that. You just have to worship Allah and submit to Allah. And you say, okay, well, has Allah shown me what to do next? Yes, Allah has shown you what to do next. You know what you're doing next. Then submit to that and do it. Submit to that and do it. So, and then he says, when the Muslim remembers this fact and then continues to remain aware of it, or he quickly becomes aware of it again, whenever he becomes distracted or tempted by this world, his heart will be rid of everything besides him, right? You don't fall into these temptations, you don't fall into these distractions and these worries, right? Not just in terms of sins and evil actions, but just getting worried or anxious. You start saying, well, no, 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 no. I'm a lost slave and I submit to that reality. I submit to that reality. And therefore his heart will not be attached to wealth, rank, praise, vanity, or pride, nor will it succumb to rancor, malice, or envy, or to some false hope in another creation. Right? You don't let your heart get sucked away by these things, and you start thinking about yourself more than you start thinking about Allah. And he says this because he will have been made to absorb the full meaning of slavehood, that he is his owner's property. Right? It's like you sort of accept that, okay, Allah has a plan for me in life. You can think about it this way. And there are unbelievers who have worked this out, right? There's an interesting book by a guy called a philosopher in London called John Gray. I think he's at University College London. And he wrote a book called Straw Dogs. This guy's like, I think he's an atheist, as far as I know, right? But his book, he argues in that book, he says that, we live in this age where people keep talking about, individualism and the freedom to choose and all that kind of stuff. But he says, but again, if you back it up and or you even just stop and reflect, you realize that very, very few decisions in your life are made by you, right? You didn't decide where you were born. You didn't decide when you were born. You didn't decide who your parents are. You didn't decide what your ethnicity or nationality is, right? Does anyone remember this? Before we came into this world, was it decided like, hey, man, I think I'll be Singaporean. I'll be English. I'll be born over here. You didn't make that decision. No, no one made that, right? All these decisions were made for you, right? And then you think about the first part of your life. Your parents were making decisions for you. They were deciding like where you go to school and where you're going to live and who your friends. And they made all the decisions. And then it's very late on. They start thinking, okay, maybe I'll do this with my career. Maybe I'll choose this subject. So many things are not chosen by you. And then again, even when you do have the opportunity to make a choice by your life, it's restricted or confined by certain circumstances, right? I'm 5'7". I can't say, well, I want to be a center forward in the NBA. That's not going to work. I'm fine. There's so many things that confine you. So you start realizing when you really, really narrow it down, you realize that ultimately, you have two choices in this life that are purely yours. Number one, are you going to believe or disbelieve? And then number two, are you going to obey or disobey? That's it. That's basically it. You boil it all down, and that's it. And the rest is pretty much done for you. It's pretty much done for you. Um, Here and there. Okay, so we manifest this slave to Allah, and we make dua to Allah, and we knock on Allah's door. We knock on Allah's door. We ask for things, right? So we say, if you're given something, you're grateful. If you're given something, you're grateful, and you use what you have to please Allah further. You use what Allah gives you to please Allah further. And if something is withheld from you, you're patient, and you are certain that it's not the best thing for you in this worldly life, right? And I think I've mentioned this before. I've got the video on my channel where Imam Sha'rawi, rahimahullah, the great Egyptian Mufassir, he talks about the ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah 2:16, where Allah says, "Asa an taqrahu shay'an wa khayrun lakum," right? "Wa asa an tuhibbu shay'an wa sharrun lakum." Like perhaps you will hate something that's good for you, and you will love something that's bad for you. Wallahu ya'lam wa antum la ta'lamun. And he says again. So he says, based on that, when you make dua to Allah and you ask Allah for something, never ever say that your dua was not answered. Because fundamentally, when you make dua to Allah, when you ask Allah for that thing, right, for that job or that raise or that promotion or to get married to so and so or to have kids or to move so and so, what are you fundamentally asking for? Feel free to answer. What are you fundamentally asking for when you make this dua? when you ask Allah for something, what are you fundamentally asking for? One was gone quiet and wants to say anything. All right, you're fundamentally asking for khair, right? Oh, close one. Yeah, that's true. That's true as well. But you're fundamentally asking for khair. You're asking for goodness, right? Because you think that that thing is good for you, right? You believe it'll be good for you if you get that job, or if you do that degree, or if you marry that person, or if you whatever. That's what you believe. But you don't know that it's good. Allah knows that it's good. So Allah will withhold it from you because He knows that something else is better for you. And you have to accept that. So Imam Sha'abi's point is Allah is always answering your dua because you're asking for khair and Allah is giving you khair, but He's giving the khair that He knows, not the khair that you think is khair. So then Imam al-Buti quotes the hadith, which says, when you ask Allah. Messenger of Allah Sallallahu said, when you ask Allah. When you seek help from Allah. If all of creation came together to benefit you with something, they would only benefit you with something that Allah had already written for you. If they came together to harm you with something, they would only harm you with something that Allah had already written against you. This makes it clear that in order for your heart not to be attached to this world, it is not a condition that man remove from his heart his need for it and his desires therein. You see, this is the key thing I said before. We're not meant to be completely detached from the world, and we have absolutely no desires, right? There's a wisdom why we have these desires. Like, as I explained before, there's a wisdom why we like food, why we like drink, why we like to be clothed, why we like shelter, why we like to get married, right? There's a reason why that's there, right? We're not meant to be completely detached like aliens or robots, and we have no, we have these things. But the key thing is that you ask Allah for these things. That's the point. You ask Allah for these things. You understand that these desires that you have, they're only going to be fulfilled and in a halal way through Allah. Like you have to ask Allah to give you to grant you these things. So that's why he says he should only turn to Allah for all his needs and only ask Him for what he wants and loves, and only complain to Him about that which causes him pain and suffering. Right? And then he quotes a few ayats. فَابْتَغُوا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ الرِّزْقَ. So secret provision from Allah in Surah Al-Buti, ayah 17, and then Nisa, ayah 32. أَسْأَلُ اللَّهِ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. Ask Allah for His bounty. فَفِرُّوا إِلَى اللَّهِ إِنِّي لَكُمْ مِنْهُ نَذِيرٌ مُبِينٌ. So flee to Allah. Truly I bring a clear warning. Clear warning. I bring you a clear warning from Him. So he goes on to talk about this in the nature of man's weakness, and he makes a very important point here. He says there's no contradiction between being pleased with the Allah the Exalted's decree and complaining to Him. Because you're complaining to Him. That's why you're complaining to Him. So there's nothing wrong with you. Like you might be going through a tribulation in your life, but there's nothing wrong with you going to Allah and dua and saying, "Oh Allah, this is hard. Oh Allah, I'm struggling with this. This is difficult. Please make this easy for me. Please give me some relief, grant me some respite." And that's you manifesting your beautiful slave to Allah. This is a beautiful thing, right? You're not being angry with Allah. That's like, oh, what now? What am I dealing with now? Another tribulation. No, that's not the attitude. You're with Allah. You're breaking yourself, like Imam Ramadan also says. You're breaking yourself before Allah. You're saying, "This is my state. Allah, help me. I'm just your weak slave. I'm struggling with this. This is hard. This is difficult. Please grant me some respite. Please grant me some relief." And this is Allah bringing you closer to Him. And like I said before, this is the greatest blessing, is this nearness to Allah. And he says, like this, the paragraph before, he said, if the slave's heart is attached to Allah, his slavery to Him increases whenever his feelings of need increase and his various aspirations and endeavors. This is because the very substance of slavehood within man is his need and his weakness. This is why you're Allah's slave. This is the wisdom behind it. You're weak. Right? Man is created weak, as Allah says in Surah Nisa. If he had no need of the one who created him, and with a natural disposition to be attached to him, and if he was not weak and incapable of realizing his aspirations, there would be no point of adhering to the slavehood, right? This slave, it's like you recognize that Allah is the one who's all powerful. Allah is the one who created you. You are a weak human being, but you have these needs, you have these desires, you have these things that need to be fulfilled, and therefore you turn to Allah and you manifest a slavehood. So, and then he goes and he gives the Imam al-Buti It tells the story of what happened to the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam after Ta'if. After Ta'if, right? Because we talk about complaining. Well, after Ta'if, when the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was kicked out of Ta'if and people threw stones at him and he was bleeding and he was suffering, he said, "Oh Allah, to you alone, Allahumma inni ilayka ashku du'afa quwwati," right? He said, "Oh Allah, to you alone, I complain about my weakness, my lack of means, and my humiliation before people. I complain to you alone. You are the most merciful of those who show mercy. You are the Lord of the weak, and you are my Lord. To whom do you entrust me? To some stranger who scowls at me, or to an enemy who you have given power over me? As long as you are not angry with me, I do not care. But I will be happier with your compassion. I seek refuge in the light of your face, by which darkness is replaced with radiance, and the affair of both this life and the hereafter are rectified, so that your anger does not descend upon me, nor your wrath befall me. I seek your pleasure until you are pleased. There is no strength nor power except by you. So this is the perfect example from the Messenger of Allah of how to manifest that slavehood. So that's what the Messenger of Allah is doing. Do I say, "Oh, to you, I complain. I complain," and he says, "As long as you're not angry, I do not care. But I would prefer this. I would be happier with your compassion." So Imam al-Buti continues and he says, "Therefore, the remedy is for us to remember our true identity constantly, to know the function that Allah has created us for, and to make it an end as the forefront of our minds." Right. So we're always striving to manifest his true identity, which is that we are Allah's slaves, and to use what the world contains as a means to get there, right? Use what was around you as a means to manifest that slavehood. And this is the reality of the slavehood, and is the loftiest rank that the Siddiqeen, the truly sincere, occupy, and the Mukhlisin aspire to. Because as for the masses, he says this problem, the masses, most people, they mistake the reality for the manifestations of worship. So they see manifestations of worship, right? And they think that's the reality. So it's not about simply worshiping in the outward sense of like performing the prayers, performing the fasting. No, the prayers and the fasting, it has to be embodied within that true slave unto Allah. It's not because the prayer is not bending and stretching 5 times a day. It's manifesting to Allah. Same thing with fasting. Fasting is not just simply doing without food and drink. It's manifesting slave unto Allah underneath that as the foundation stone of that. So he says, this is why those who carry out outwardly beautiful acts of worship are the majority of the Muslims, while those who realize their inward slavehood are the rare minority among them. He said, this is the thing. This is the end of the chapter. He says, this is the thing that people, we look at the outward worship and we neglect to realize that what the core of that worship is supposed to be that slave unto Allah, and recognizing and embracing that slave unto Allah, that we are Allah's slaves. And this is why we worship him, because he's commanded us, right? I guess I'll give you uh, an example to finish with. And this is something we get caught up with because we forget like this basic obedience to Allah. Like this happens every Ramadan. I don't know. Uh, I'll answer the question in a minute. We're almost finished. Thank you, Maryam. So like for example, um, I see this a lot in the UK. I don't know what it's like in Singapore or Malaysia, but being in the UK, like when people are not Muslim ask Muslims, they say, "Oh, like why do you fast from Ramadan?" And they say, "Oh, because we want to know how poor people feel, or we want to know what it's like to be without food, or these things." It's like yeah, those are wisdoms, but like the reason why you fast is Allah commanded you to. Like that's why you fast. Like you're in a relationship with Allah. Allah's commanded you to fast. Well, that's it. It's that simple obedience that we have to be reminded of. So when we get back to that, and we recognize our slave to Allah, and this Allah owns us, and Allah expects things of us, then we act accordingly, and we don't get angry and upset about the circumstances or what our observations are. But we recognize that no, we are Allah's slave, and Allah knows what's best for us. Alhamdulillah, so I'll finish there. Ustaz Jalaluddin, are we going to jump into the question here?
You can proceed with answering the question, inshallah. MashaAllah. Barakallah Fiki Maryam initiating the question.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Taking a break now today, Jalaluddin.
You get a camel for tonight, inshallah.
Inshallah. Okay, so we work on ourselves and get reminded by our duty to Allah, saying that Deen is nasiha. How long do you stay giving nasiha? When you see someone who's not chained, possibly taking you into temptations or demons that are influencing them, do you cut relations or keep trying? Okay. Yeah, very good question. Very good question. Okay. Alhamdulillah, Rasulillah. First of all, you have to think about these people you're talking about. You have to be careful with you have to make a distinction between family and friends, right? Family or obviously family and non-family. Because obviously family have rights over you, right? So with family, you don't want to cut them off, right? You want to maintain, even if they're very difficult to deal with, you want to maintain open lines of communication, right? So that if they need to find you, if they need to contact you, they know where to find you, right? They have an email, they have a phone number, they have something, right? You don't just cut them off completely. All right, you don't block them on WhatsApp and block their emails. No, you leave lines of communication over with them. And then when it comes to people who are not family, who do not necessarily have those rights over you, then you have to be careful. You have to really measure the situation. So I think what you're saying there is it's good. There's a good metaphor. There's a good metaphor to think about this is like when you swim out, like when a lifeguard swims out to the sea, swims out onto a beach to go save someone who's drowning. The lifeguard does not swim out to the drowning person and just grab him and pull him back, right? What the lifeguard does instead is the lifeguard will swim out to where the drowning person is, then sort of stop, and then from a distance of maybe a meter or so, kick the drowning person to say, "I'm here." It's like so kick him and say, "Okay, calm down, calm down, calm down, breathe. Okay, now it's good." Because if the lifeguard runs out to the drowning person, just grabs him, the drowning person might get really excited or even panic, and then cling on to the lifeguard, and then they both sink. Then they both sink and drown, right? So that's a good metaphor to think about this. You have to say, okay, how far can I go with this before it actually affects me? Um, so that's I can't give you an exact measurement because it's your personal discretion. You have to say, okay, I'm trying to help this person. I'm trying to get to this person, but like eventually, like the influence this person is having a bad influence on me, and therefore I can't take this anymore, right? Or I guess another metaphor could be like if you're going to a burning building to save someone. I mean, there's a certain point you realize, okay, that there's too much smoke. I'm going to inhale the smoke and I'm going to get sick. I'm going to die. So do your best. But if you find that it's not being reciprocated and you're falling into bad influences, then you have to pull back. Uh, and to protect yourself. And the thing is, even if you keep distance from these people, you can still make dua for them. And the other thing you can do, it's one of the ways of the blessing of the age we live in, is that there are ways to talk to people without actually directly communicating with them. That's what we have with the internet, social media. There are ways that you can send messages to people indirectly, or you can send stuff over WhatsApp or Telegram or something like that, or you can send an email to remind them. And you don't have to be affected by being there. You don't have to be in the same room as them. You don't have to be affected by them in any way. You're just sending a reminder. So that's what I would advise you to do. But use your own discretion. And we're talking here about slave to Allah. Ask Allah. Ask Allah to guide you through the situation. Always do that. Always ask Allah through the situation. Say that this is a difficult situation. I care about so and so. I'm trying to help him. I'm trying to help her. Just ask Allah for success and ask Allah to show you the best way to deal with this situation, and then also ask Allah to help this person. Um, and Allah alone deserves success, obviously. I hope that answers your question. If not, please tell me. Okay. Okay. Shukran, Mariam. Shukran. Anything else to add? If there's anything else to add, please let me know. Um, any other questions? Ustaz Jalaluddin. Oh, wait, here we go. Uh, how do you overcome extreme shyness as it affects me in my journey of seeking knowledge? Jazakallah barakallahu feekum. Okay. Um, Alhamdulillah, okay, again, a couple of things to bear in mind. Number one, you have to. I'm going to bring du'a up twice here. Number one, you have to ask Allah to rid you of this. You have to ask Allah to cure you of this, to give you courage, because that's where it all starts. You have to ask Allah, make the law to Allah again, manifest the slave to Allah. Don't ignore this. The second thing to do is to sort of ask yourself why you're shy. You have to ask yourself why you're shy. You have to do some self psychology here. And I talked about this in my book, The Big Step, which was published about 5 years ago now. Big Step. I talked about this. Like, so most likely, Allah knows best, this could be something from your childhood. So maybe, for example, maybe in your childhood, maybe you were not encouraged by whoever to express yourself. Maybe when you did express yourself, you were laughed at, or you were scolded, or you were mocked at. Maybe that's an experience you have, and because what happens here is if a child goes through that experience where he or she is growing up, and every time he or she tries to express an opinion or express an idea, they get laughed at or shouted at or scolded or whatever. What happens is a subconscious belief then is then rooted or established inside, right? And it's called a subconscious belief because it's not really expressed, but it's there and it's a serious belief. So the subconscious belief can be something like, uh, well, there you go, Muhammad, right? So the subconscious belief is my opinions are of no value, right? My opinions are worthless. That's the subconscious belief, right? My opinions are worthless. My opinions are no good, right? So what you have to do is you have to change that. You have to change that. You have to say, well, no. My opinions are worth something. It's just that certain people don't like it. Maybe it's, I don't know, my parents or my brothers and sisters or whoever it was, my cousins, they don't like my okay, but that's not everyone. That's not everyone, right? So you have to um uh and again, this kind of ties in with what Miriam asked before. It's kind of interesting because so what you have to do in your situation. This is my advice. And Allah knows best. This is my advice to you. Is you have to look at your circle of friends. Look at your circle of friends and see your circle of friends. Like, are there people in your circle of friends who listen to you when you speak? Right? Because family again, family is something else. But like your circle of friends, if you have a circle of friends who don't really listen to you when you speak and don't encourage you when you speak, then those are not good friends. Those are not sincere friends, right? You want to be around people who genuinely want to listen to you and genuinely want to hear what you have to say and are genuinely happy for you when you achieve something. They're genuinely sad for you when something bad happens to you. That's what you want to look out for. So you want to sort of examine your circle of friends, and you want to be around people who will encourage you, will encourage you to say things. And if you say something wrong, obviously they'll correct you, but in a good way. They'll say, "Oh, well, it's a better way to say this." Then they'll give you what we call constructive criticism, right? Not just harsh criticism, constructive criticism. So that's what I think your probably your issue is yeah. You have to remove that subconscious belief that you're not good at anything, or that your opinions are worthless, or that you have nothing good to say. You have to remove that and ask Allah for success in removing that. Ask Allah. This is why I bring it back to Allah. Ask Allah to remove any psychological harm that was done to you as a child. Ask Allah to remove that and identify those subconscious beliefs and remove them, and tell yourself the opposite. Say, no. My opinions are worth something. I do have something to offer. I do have good things to say. I am good at something. I'm not worthless. I'm not nothing. And try to surround yourself with people who encourage you, not people who praise you and turn you into an egomaniac, which is the opposite the opposite end of the spectrum. But people who encourage you, people who actually genuinely want to listen to you. And inshallah, you'll benefit a lot. Inshallah. So, alhamdulillah. I hope that answered your question, Brother Muhammad. I hope that answers your question, inshallah. Well, yeah, barakallahu fikum. There's a chapter in the book, The Big Step. It's called "Getting Over Your Childhood." You might find that useful if you look into it, inshallah. Barakallahu fik. Anyone else? Any other questions? I'm looking at you, Muhammad Jalal. See Jalaluddin. Look at you. Is it your turn to jump in?
something that I just wanted to talk. I'm not sure if it's relevant to today's topic, but I think there are some parts that is about seeking Allah,
Mm.
regards to what we need, what we hope for.
Mm.
So yeah, someone says anything. Okay. So I think
Just me.
oh, okay. So I think something that's lingering in almost everyone's mind all over the world now, the situation in Palestine. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. So that's something that's I think people face challenge in terms of praying to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala to help those people, but seeing that things are getting worse and things are not getting throughout the years things are getting worse and getting worse. So what's the solution? What they are able to do, things like that. So I just wanted to get your thoughts about that topic.
Alhamdulillah. An easy question. Okay.
Oh, mashallah, that's good.
Okay. Okay, no. Okay. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wassalam ala Rasulillah. Um, it's uh it's a very painful thing to watch. Um, if anyone's been following the news, and not the mainstream news, like if you just go on social media, you go on Twitter, you go on Instagram, you see the pictures from Gaza of women, children, cats, even. I mean, everything just being obliterated. أمر المؤمن كله خير, the Messenger of Allah SAW said, you know, the affair of the believer is always good. It's always good, right? If something good happens, we thank Allah. If something bad happens, we're patient. We have to look at, we have to keep our eye on the bigger picture, on the bigger picture. Um, that these people are shuhada. These people are shuhada. Right? They've been unlawfully killed by oppressors, and the reward is with Allah. This reminds me of a story. My teacher in the UK told me, Sheikh Abu Jafar told me a story of someone he knew, someone he knew in the U.S. A Muslim brother who was falsely accused of a crime. He was falsely accused of a crime and convicted of a crime he did not commit, and he was executed uh, by electric chair. And you know, before he was electrocuted, before they put him on the before they was on the chair, before they electrocuted him, and he was just saying his final goodbyes to friends and family. Right, it's total wrong, total just oppression. Right, no evidence that he did the crime, and obviously a very somber mood. But then, you know, there was a Muslim brother there who saw the bigger picture. Right, he saw the bigger picture of what was going on, and he said to the brother who's on the electric chair about to die, and he just said, listen, this is the last pain you're ever going to feel. That's it. This is the last pain you're ever going to feel. And that's what we have to believe about these people in Gaza, right? Like whatever they went through, right? Like the buildings collapsing on them or the shrapnel from the rockets going, whatever. That was just a, you know, like a little pinch on the skin. And their reward is with Allah. Their reward is with Allah. They that was the last pain they ever feel. Um, so there, and that's what the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam also told us about. You know, after one of the battles, he said, you know, our dead are in paradise. Their dead are in the fire. Right. So the victory is ours. Well, either way you look at it, the victory is ours. So that's the way to understand it. And that's what we should tell ourselves as the solace of all of this. It's horrible what's happening, but only from the dunyawi perspective. These people have an immense reward with Allah. I would say at the same time, um, if you're looking for like the khair, we're trying to look for khair as well. You want to look for some khair from in the dunyawi sense. Um, I've been following like certain analysis because I do keep my eye on geopolitics and the analysis of things, and I do try to, and I like to look at things from the positive. You have to keep your eye on the bigger picture. The world is drastically changing right now. The world is drastically changing right now, right? We are at the end. And again, I can tie this in with Imam Ramadan because Imam Ramadan talks about this. There's a whole series called the Qadam, right? The Progress of Nations. There's also in the book on civilization in the Quran. Imam Ramadan talks about this point that civilizations and great nations, they go through cycles. They go through cycles, and what always happens is there's a point where, and this doesn't, I mean, this happens. I'm talking about the civilization level, but this happens at the individual level. It happens at the group level, like an organization or a company or a club, or whatever, all the way up to the level of a nation or an empire, where that nation or that empire forgets where it came from. It forgets the hard work that it put in to get to where it is, and instead starts believing, well, I'm successful because I'm me, right? Or we're us, right? Like we're successful because we're America. We're successful because we're Manchester United, or we're successful because we're Coca-Cola, right? Um, or we're FedEx or whatever it is, right? Because they have these expressions in the West, like living off the name, right? But the expression living off the name means when a company gets so big and successful, that then becomes arrogant and thinks, okay, now we can cut corners because we're such a great big company. And then what happens is the service goes down, the quality goes down, and then the company eventually fades away and gets replaced. Does anyone remember Kodak? You remember Kodak, the company that used to make the camera films?
Yep.
Where are they now? Because they didn't see it. They didn't see it coming. They didn't see smartphones coming, right? Or Kodak, it's the biggest camera film producer in the world. Okay, and now where are you now? So what I'm getting at is what's happened over the past 2 years, especially, or the past 18 months, is it's become very, very clear to people that there's a new I don't want to say, well, if like new world order, people get scared. No, what I mean is there's a new structure of the world whereas that the age of unipolar American dominance is over. It's over, right? Because America fell exactly into that trap that Imam Bolti talks about, right? America thought that they could get Russia through Ukraine. That's failed completely. It's been almost 2 years now, and Russia's just winning. Ukraine is completely broke. I don't care what the press tells you. Ukraine is broke. They have no more soldiers. They're and now with the Israel thing, they're
All
not
the
going to get anything
weapons
from
that they are
America
going
now.
to send to Israel, right?
Exactly. So it's all done. It's all done, right? And people are realizing that we're now moving into a multipolar world, right? Like, Russia will be one, China will be one, India will probably be one, Brazil, all these other countries are going to rise to the fore, and not seek world domination because they're not Americans. They don't think like that. So what I'm getting at is the fact that what we could see from the result of this, what we could see as a result of all what's happening now in Palestine, is that Israel could seriously lose because Israel is on the wrong side of history. And Israel, because of what they're doing in Gaza, they're losing credibility around the world, right? People are not happy with Israel now. People are seeing like, wait a second, these guys are like Nazis. These guys they're it's like they're ethnocentrists. They want to have their own ethno pure state, and they're doing ethnic cleansing and genocide against the Palestinians. And it's coming out now. People are seeing this more and more. Um, One interesting guy I've been following is a guy called Scott Ritter, who's a former UN's weapons inspector. And he's been to Israel, he's been to Iraq, he's been to all these places. He's very familiar with the region, very familiar with Russia as well. And he's saying that the American military is not what it used to be. The Israeli military is not what it used to be, and you know, and it's amazing. You think about what I was saying about the Qadam Modul, like this, like like the advance of nations and why nations fall. Like I don't know if anyone saw it in the news recently. The current U.S. president was interviewed on TV, and it was said to him, "Can America really do this? Can America fight two wars at the same time? Can you fight Ukraine and Israel at the same time?" And the response was exactly what Imam Ramadan said it would be. We're the United States of America. That's literally what he said. Damn it, that's what we are, right? We're the greatest nation in history of the world. Of course we can fight here and fight there. I was like, no, no, you can't. Right? People are in the north saying, no, you can't. No, no. The American military is not what it used to be. This is not 1991 anymore. Like the American military with all that hardware, all that that means like the soldiers, the way the soldiers are, the way the weapons are. No, you can't. Right? It didn't work. It hasn't worked in Ukraine for 18 months. You've done nothing. You've done nothing to harm Russia at all. And then what are you going to do in what are you going to do in Israel? What are you going to do with Israel and Palestine? Nothing. You can't do anything. You don't have the man. You don't have the technology. And it turns out that Hamas and Hezbollah and other organizations, say what you want about them, they're actually much better equipped than you think. Actually, much better than you think, and they actually have Russia and China waiting in the background. So this is not this is a situation where it's not ideal because we have to understand the hukum. Remember the hukum regarding Palestine. The hukum regarding Palestine is that it's Dar al-Islam. That's the point. It's Dar al-Islam. It was made Dar al-Islam. And something that the Hanabila also like to stress about that it's waqf. Like those lands are off, right? So there isn't supposed to be a state of Israel, and there and people who are not Muslim are not supposed to rule that land. That is part of Dar al-Islam. Now that doesn't mean people might misinterpret that. Say, no, no, no. That doesn't mean that Jews can't live there. Jews want to live there. They can live there. All right. They were allowed to live there before. They can live. That's not a problem. But the point is that is Dar al-Islam. That's supposed to be Muslim land. Now, what could happen? What could happen in the meantime, is we could get uh, a sort of compromise. It's not ideal. Like I said, it's supposed to be Dar al-Islam, but we could very well get a two-state solution out of this, where Israel like seriously loses because they do not have the manpower, they do not have the weaponry, they do not have the technology, right? They're big 300,000 men. They're reservists, right? They're people who did like 2.5 years of service, like well, way back in the day. They're not trained. They're not trained for this. And so the result could very well be like a truncated Israel. You could get a small Israel out of this, and the rest of it is Palestine, and it could be like the 96 borders. That could actually come out of this, which is not ideal, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. Um, so that's the positive thing. And I think again, like I said, that American dominance is fading away now. It's over. And all Israel really is just it's an outpost of American colonialism. That's what it is, right? Or British colonialism. The British have admitted this. The British have admitted this. Like Israel is like it's a Northern Ireland in the Middle East. Yeah, it's all familiar. That's what it is. It's a colonial outpost, right? And that colonial age is dying now because remember it lasted after all those wars after all those independence movements, for example, in Africa and Middle East in the 1960s. Yes, those were wars of independence, but the French, the British, they still had strongholds. But look what's happening recently in Africa, like places like Niger, like Burkina Faso, Mali. These people are kicking out the French because the French don't officially rule the place, but they're still exploiting the place. They're exploiting the minerals. They're exploiting the wealth of those countries, and now they're getting kicked out, right? So Israel is just there, the state, smack in the Middle East, and everyone's just looking at them like you guys are just a colonial outpost. But that's all you are. You're a relic of the colonial age. You don't belong here anymore. I think Scott Ritter pointed out that like Israel, like Israel, for example, uh, I think they used to in the past. They used to attend some massive. I think it was like African Union or some massive summit in Africa. They were disinvited. They've been disinvited the past couple of years, and then when they try to go, they get kicked out. Like, like no one has sympathy for them. That's what we have to see. The long term thing in this dunya is that the sympathy for them is going very very fast. They're not wanted, and they do not have America behind them anymore because America is not the big bad people that America is not what people think it is. America is like a bodybuilder, right? He looks big and strong, but he can't fight. He can't fight. Right? He's not a warrior. He's just a poster boy. That's it. So that's why I was taking as a positive thing, and that's a natural understanding. Again, we go back to we were talking about Imam Ramadan's books here. That's actually a natural cycle of how these things happen. Is that these civilizations they come and go and they come and they rise they rise and they decline and they start declining when they start seeing themselves as just they forget where they came from and they just see themselves as inherently powerful. That's summarized perfectly in Joe Biden's statement. We're the United States of America. Damn it. Okay. Well, that's you just summarized right there. So that's what we see as a positive thing, and that's why Imam Ramadan in the book on civilization he stresses the point. He said because unlike how they see it, the Western they see civilizations as it's just natural things, organic. It's just it's like birth, growth, peak, decline. Right? It's a graph. Right? It says Islam's not like that. Islam has the tools to perpetuate itself because we recognize our slave to Allah, and we have the tools we have the tools to revive ourselves. We can revive ourselves. Like if our civilization starts to decline, we can revive it because we remember, like just what we covered today in this chapter. We remember, oh wait, we're not great because of we're so and so. We're great because we're Allah's slaves, and we go back to that, and the civilization continues, or the civilization is revived. They don't have that. America doesn't have that. So America's just going to go down, and then what's Israel going to do? So that's what you see as the long-term outcome that Israel will lose. They will lose whatever war it is. They're not prepared for urban combat in Gaza. Hamas are just like waiting for them to come in. They're desperate. They're like, come on, come on, come on. They're waiting for it because it's their territory and they know exactly what to do. And Israel, they're not prepared for it. They're not a fighting people. They're not a warrior type of people, and they don't have the means to really deal with this. So, inshallah khair, inshallah khair. So inshallah, in the ukhrawi sense, we've won. In the ukhrawi sense, we've won, and in the dunyawi sense, we'll win as well, inshallah. So, and may Allah have mercy and grant ease to all those people. Ya Rab, Ya Rab. Alhamdulillah. Hold on. Would we consider as a military American post to keep the Muslim countries in a state of non-movement? I'm not sure what do you mean by that?
Means does it mean that the Muslim so that the Muslim country cannot develop or cannot?
It's like are the Americans behind this? Yeah, I mean Americans, European countries. Yeah, well, I would say a lot of them are. If you're talking about what they call the third world, yeah, a lot of these countries are poor because they're kept that way. They're kept that way, right? This is what we're learning about with Africa, like the French and the British, the French especially, the Americans. They because they exploit these countries and they put in puppet rulers that they control, and therefore and then they manipulate the economies, right? They make sure these countries don't benefit from the gold or the silver or the oil or the natural gas, whatever they have in these countries. So they make sure they don't benefit from it. Uh, and even for simple things that people don't understand, people don't understand a lot of foreign aid is used in that way. It's not good, a lot of foreign aid, because again, if a country like America flies over, an African country and just dumps wheat and rice out of the sky, like, oh, they're being really generous. Well, you just killed the agricultural industry in that country, right? Because where's the incentive to actually grow your own crops if you literally have rice and grain and corn dropping out of the sky? You see, so that's something to understand. If we're talking, if you're talking about why Muslim countries are not doing anything like now, those governments now, Allahu A'lam, right? But it's about. I think a lot of them are just being pragmatic. Allahu A'lam, like yes, some of them, are not who we think we are, right? Some rulers. I don't know details about that, but again, some of them are probably just being pragmatic and think, okay, if we go into war, uh, with Israel, what's going to happen? Because again, what a lot of people are scared of is like they don't want this. Okay, we know prophecy, but a lot of people are scared of like a World War III, right? So if we get involved, and so also gets involved, and so also gets involved, and the Chinese get involved, and the Russians get involved, it's like no one wants that. Um, but I mean, but we stay positive. We stay positive that Israel will lose this war, and it's interesting. I don't know if you guys saw in the news yesterday. Um, because the Israelis are saying we haven't got into Gaza yet because weather. They'll always make up these excuses, right? Like the weather and all these kinds of things. And then you look at whether it's fine because the real reason is they're scared. They're scared and they're not trained for this. That's why they're not haven't gone into Gaza yet, as in terms of like a ground invasion. But then yesterday, Allah sent massive floods to Tel Aviv. I don't know if you saw the news,
Yeah, yeah.
right? There's huge rainfall in Tel Aviv, cars floating down the road, all that kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, that's from Allah. That's from Allah. That's the thing. So, inshallah, what we'll do, inshallah, as Muslims, is we'll wake up to this, and we have to also, as again, this goes back to the contents of this book. We need to rectify ourselves. We need to rectify ourselves, really. This is what Imam al-Buti said back during the Syrian crisis. He said, we need to, علينا أن نجدد البيعة مع Allah. We need to renew our oath of allegiance to Allah, our bay'ah with Allah, and work on ourselves, because that's what Allah says. In Allah la yughayyiru biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. Surah Al-Ra'd, ayah 11, 13th chapter, verse 11. Allah does not change people until they change within themselves. We have to work on ourselves. And fortify ourselves and make ourselves strong believers. Because again, if you go back to, you open a can of worms here with this question, Brother Muhammad. but again, if you go back and you read, which I find really interesting, if you go back and you read the history, like, you know, go back to the last time that land was occupied by a foreign power. It's the Crusades. It was the Crusades, right? The Christian Europeans were occupying Jerusalem and the other surrounding areas. And I've raised this point in other class. I don't know if you remember, but it's like if you take it back, you look at it. Okay, so the Muslims arrive. If the Muslims arrive, the Crusaders, they arrived in 1099. They arrived in 1099 in the Gregorian calendar, right? The Muslims didn't take it back on the Salatin Ayyubi until 1187, right? That's 88 years. What was going on in that time? 88 years. What was going on was the fact that Salatin Ayyubi and Noordin Zengi, is they were cleaning up the internal problems. Because this thing you have to understand. You have to clean up the internal enemies before you do the external enemies, right? You have to sweep your own porch before you clean up the neighborhood. I think Imam Ghazali has a statement in Kitab al-Tawhid wa Tawakkul in the Ihya al-Ulumuddin. He says, before you deal with the dog outside, deal with the dog in the house. Before you deal with the dog in the house, deal with the dog in your heart. So what Salahuddin Ayyubi and Noordin Zengi and others were dealing with was that they got rid of the Hashishiyin cult that were causing problems in Syria. They took over. Egypt, right? The Fatimid Egypt. They took that over. That's why Azhar is a Sunni to today. And then during that time as well, they built madaris, all over Sham and Egypt. All over Sham and Egypt. And they produced a generation of Tulab al-Ilm, people who memorized the Quran, who knew their fiqh. And not just that, but they conquered this inward sin. These were people who fasted, they prayed to Hajjat, right? They prayed to Hajjat. That's why I found a video on Instagram I share with people where my brother was making this point. He said that Salahuddin Ayyubi, he would say, when he would see his people, like his soldiers, praying Fajr and Jama'ah, and see them praying to Hajj, he would say, "Ya'ti al-nasr min huna," or "Ta'ti nasr," like victory comes from this. This is where the victory comes from. It's not the whole way. It comes from this. You're praying to Hajj, you're praying Fajr and Jama'ah, especially. So the point is, Imam Salahuddin Ayyubi, he raised an army from those Tulab al-Ilm. That's where that army came from. That army came from those students of knowledge and those madaris. That's where it came from, those madrasas, right? People who knew their fiqh and they knew Allah and they memorized Quran and they prayed the Hajj and they fasted. He raised an army of righteous people. And that's what took over the Crusades, to destroy the Crusaders. That's what did. It was a building, and that's why Imam al-Buti, he has a whole book on jihad, like how we understand, we practice it. He said, min shurut al-jihad mujahideen, right? You can't fight jihad without mujahideen. You have to have proper mujahideen. Right? And Mujahideen are not these psychopaths on TV saying death to America. No, that's not no. the real Mujahid is the true man, the complete man, the absolute slave of Allah. Who knows how to fight? That's the Mujahid. He's a slave of Allah first. And he's dedicated to Allah and he worships Allah with sincerity and with love. So This is what we are. This is what we have to get at. We have to realize that we really need to rectify ourselves as an ummah, and that starts at the individual level. We have to work on ourselves. We have to work on ourselves, um, and also understand that this is why these things happen. That there's a reason why um, people like the Israelis think they can just get away with this. You see, because we really have to strengthen ourselves as believers, and then again, our strength lies in our dedication to Allah. Final point on that, to answer this question. Final point again, if you go back to the first book we did, A Man Not Justice on Earth, read the advice. It's on my blog as well. Maybe I'll share it in the group afterwards. The advice of Umar al-Khattab to Sa'd ibn Waqqas for
Yeah.
anhuma when he went to the Battle of Qadisiyah,
Yeah.
and he said that al-Khattab anhu, he said that the army has to fear themselves more than the enemy. You have to fear your own anfus more than the enemy. He said because our success does not come from adid wal udad. We don't win because we have greater numbers, because we don't. We don't win because we have greater equipment, because we don't. We win because our obedience to Allah is better. That's why we obey Allah and they don't. That's why we win. We don't win just because we're Muslims. No, we win because we obey Allah, and that's what we have to do. Alhamdulillah, Rasulillah. I'll share that on the group, inshallah.
Barakallahu feekum, Ustaz Mahdi. Thank you for the just sharing with us what your thoughts are with regards to the challenge that our brothers and also internally what we are facing nowadays. And inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ease our affairs and the affairs of our brothers all over the world, inshallah. So
Ameen,
with that, with that, we've come to the conclusion of
should
tonight's
we set?
halaqah. Yeah, I just wanted to say.
Set the next date, by the way.
Yeah. So is it the 13th, 20th, or 27th?
For November.
Yep.
We could do the 27th.
I can we do it 20th or 13th? Because 27th, I think I'll be a bit busy. My wife will just come back from Umrah that day, so I'll be
Mashallah. Okay, we'll do the 20th then, November 20th.
Yeah, okay then. Inshallah.
I'll make a note now. November, that's like in 4 weeks. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah.
Tayyib, inshallah.
Yeah, with that, thank you very much, and thank you everyone for being with us tonight. And let us end our session tonight with Tasbih Kafara and Surah Al-Asr. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Tusbihu ala al-khair, everyone. Good night, everyone, and good afternoon to Ustaz Mahdi, inshallah. Have a nice day.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.